Welcome to Misunderstood, where we talk about identity, the meaning of the word race, and explore the multicultural and multiracial experience through personal stories, candid conversations, and expert insights. I'm Hana Lee. Thank you for being here. Today, we continue the conversation around transracial and transcultural adoption, and I feel so privileged to have Maria Fernanda join us. Born in Quito, Ecuador, Maria Fernanda's life took a pivotal turn when she was surrendered to an orphanage before her first birthday. Adopted and brought to the United States at a young age, Maria grappled with the complexities of transracial adoption, longing to understand her roots and reclaim her identity. Her journey of self-discovery led her to co-create Adoptees of Latin America plus Extended Latin Americas, a community space for adult adoptees with ties to Latin countries, as well as Guia Nova, a mentoring program for adoptees in all stages of the reunion process. Join us as we delve into Maria Fernanda's incredible journey of finding her birth family, as well as discuss the themes of loss, reunion, and mental health impacts within the adoptee community, and the importance of keeping adoptees at the center of the conversation. Just a reminder that today's episode is part 2 of a 2-part interview with Maria Fernanda. If you haven't had a chance to listen to part 1, episode 24 from last week, I highly recommend it just to get a full picture of Maria Fernanda and the arc of this incredible journey that she's on and that's continuing to unfold. The episode is also packed with a lot of insights and information around transracial and transcultural adoption. But in the same breath, it's not critical for you to listen to part 1 in order to enjoy part 2 today. So I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Before we start, it's important to say that Misunderstood is a space where stories, ideas, and research are shared for your consideration, but it's up to you to shape your opinions in light of your own knowledge and experience. My hope is to explore, learn, and grow together with you. I don't claim to have all the answers. My aim is to start conversations around these topics. Okay, so you become a mom and you go out on this journey to start trying to find information about your first mom / your birth family. So how does one go about doing that?
Well, for my instance, I had to ask my adoptive parents, my parents here, if they had any documents. And they did. They said, yeah, we have this brown folder and, here, take it. And I remember feeling some kind of way about it just because I was like, yeah, those are mine. And let's see what I do with them. So I had to ask for the documents. And sometimes adoptive parents don't want to do that. They don't want to give that to the deserving person. That information is ours. But many times, it's not wanting to be given to us. In my case, yes. But I picked it up and I brought it home and I emptied it out on the table, and I just began kind of looking through everything and seeing if there were any clues. Now, with it being, that I was born in a Latin country, 99% of it was in Spanish.
Which you did not speak.
Right. I did not speak that anymore. I came to America speaking it and being, having known it, but I quickly unlearned it and to look at these documents, and it was very like, what am I looking at? I don't know. So that made it really tough. That made it really tough to try and figure out what these words were, what it all meant.
And there was no Google Translate back then.
No, not at all.
So you took it to someone, you were like, tell me what this says?
For a little while, because I was trying to be private about it, I tried to decipher things on my own and try and figure out if there were clues and stuff that I could get. They had the orphanage address. At that time, there wasn't a website, so didn't have that. I don't think I could find any phone numbers, but I could be wrong. But also knowing what to look at and what I could use as a tool to try and find. But things were very limited back then. It's crazy, some of the steps that I've had to take in order to try and move forward in it. So, I didn't have any names. That makes it even that much harder. The only thing I had was the orphanage's name, and I sent it snail mail a few times. Hey, I was born there. I was put in the orphanage from this time, and I was adopted and brought to the US, and I'm looking for answers, and my email and my phone number, and I sent it kind of blindly thinking, yeah, it's going to make it. And after a couple times and not hearing, I'm like, okay, I got to try a different route. I got to try something else. And all of this happened, in a span of from 2007 to where I was, searching up until 2020.
Wow. 13 years of being in this sort of searching but not really getting answers.
Yeah, a lot of dead ends. It wouldn't be until 2000 and let me go back a little bit. I would end up trying over the years, trying to contact the consulate, the embassy, even the company that facilitated my adoption, the adoption agency, that's the term. Even contacting them, over the years, and then trying to find documents through them, and shut down. And they shut down, I think, in 2004.
What?
Yeah.
That is not good timing for you.
Yeah. And so
you can't shut down an adoption agency. I mean, the documents that they hold must be passed on to someone.
Right.
No?
You would think that. But when I got a hold of the daughter of the person who created the adoption agency, they were like, we don't know where they went. And I'm like, what?
What?
That's important information that definitely should be kept somewhere.
I can't believe this.
Yeah.
That must have been a huge blow to you.
It was. I was just like, okay, I've got to check that off. That's not going to work. The embassy was not helpful. The consulate wasn't helpful. Snail mail wasn't helpful. I ended up searching and finding a missionary group online who sent people to the orphanage. And, this person said they would help me and that they had an office in Ecuador. And there was back and forth conversation for a little bit and then never again, right? So it made it really hard to want to ask for help because sometimes it was limited on what somebody wanted to do, what somebody was interested in doing, or what they were capable of doing. When the orphanage did have, they got a Facebook page years later, I messaged them and somebody responded to me there, and I was like, oh my gosh, they were just a volunteer and they weren't even being there physically. They weren't able to help me. So yeah, there were a lot of periods where I was like, okay, today I'm going to do this. And then there were a lot of periods where what am I even doing? This is not going anywhere. There's nothing that's going to help me. Took a DNA test in 2014 and that was cool and all, but it wasn't accessible to anybody outside of the US at that time. And just also understanding the privilege of being able to take a DNA test. They aren't cheap. So we did that, and I didn't find any, relatives that way. But I did kind of see my genetic makeup. And in 2014, I talked to my friend. I was like, I found the number to the orphanage. Let's see where that takes us. And she spoke Spanish. She was bilingual, and she called them and said, I'm here as a translator and a friend for Maria Fernanda, and she's wanting to see if you have any documents for her. And she's on the phone and I'm over here and I'm just like, this is not going to work. And they're like, yeah, we have we have documents.
What?
Yeah. All you need to do is send a form of ID. I can't tell you how many times I've kind of put my head down and shake my head at the system, at people, or just, parts of my journey where I'm just like, what? And it was as simple as that. And that's what was craziest. Yeah, just send your information and an ID. And I'm like, what in the world? And so I did. I sent my cedula, which is a form of an ID. And they're like, okay, well, we will get back to you, when we can. And in a week, they sent the documents over. And I didn't, when we called, I was like, they're not going to, I didn't give them the benefit of the doubt, but I was like, they're not going to have those documents from 1984. Or, they're not going to have it. How are they going to organize that stuff? I really didn't foresee them having it. And the next thing I knew, they had scanned the documents to me. And I was like, wow, it was that easy. It was that easy. And this stuff was available. when my American parents were there, and it wasn't sent with them. These people had this information for all these years, and it's because they're not expecting us to go, I want answers. They're not expecting people to come back and ask questions.
The system is not structured to support you.
Right.
In a way.
Right.
What is it like out there now? Is it changed? Is it more updated?
There are more resources for parents and adoptees. People have come out with books. People are sharing their stories and their experiences, and we're hearing things that we either chose not to acknowledge back in the day or we just didn't understand. That there's trauma attached to, adoption. There's identity issues attached to not being raised in your culture. So it's acknowledging, because the business of adoption is to create like these beautiful families, there's no room to acknowledge that there's also pain and loss and severed ties that impact us. My experiences that I've had since I was adopted haven't stopped because I became a mother. It hasn't stopped because I am in reclamation or that I'm in reunion or anything that. There's more experiences that I'm having, and I can share on one that just happened recently. So they're not understanding the impact of this big decision that we haven't been given the choice to consent to, right? It's been given for us, and then we have to kind of like, okay, I'm gonna like figure out like how to navigate life and figure out if it's okay for me to feel this way. We're having to learn how to do it on our own. We're having to learn to create community, to find community. It wasn't something that was built for our success in all of our well-being into adulthood.
I'm just curious, where were your second parents? Do you say that, or you only say the first and then you say adoptive parents?
Yeah, I say, so earlier when I was like, it's the evolution of like the words, like I refer to my mother as my first mother because I did have time with her. That's how I choose to acknowledge her. Like, she's my first mother. She has stories where she spent time bathing me and so forth. And I only refer to my adoptive parents really in that way as if I'm telling a story or if somebody doesn't know them. And I'm talking specifically about my experience as an adoptee. But when I'm here, I may use their names here with my friends because they, know the different names, or I'll say American family or U.S. family or Texas family.
Okay.
Yeah, which can be super confusing, especially even with my kids. She was like, okay, are you talking about them or them? And I was like, oh, yeah, in my head, I know what it is, but I guess I need to tell you who I'm talking about.
Okay, so your Texas, do you say Texas family then?
Yeah, that'll work. Yeah.
Not parents?
Yeah, no, they're my mom and dad. Texas mom and dad, yeah.
The Texas mom and dad.
Yeah.
So where were they in all of this journey of you searching and trying to figure this out? And what did they say when you had that breakthrough?
They were supportive as much as, I guess, as I kind of was comfortable with. Growing up, we didn't talk about my desire to search for family or that it would even be something that I was allowed to give myself permission for. So I think that kind of made it a little, at times kind of uncomfortable when I'm like, I want to look for, in those terms, my birth family, my biological mother. It was just kind of like, ugh. I didn't feel like, I wasn't worried, that they would love me less. It was just, how do they feel that I want to find these people who like gave me life? I don't know. And I just know so much for my well-being that I deserve to do this and I want to do it. And that's what, drove me. But I would share, I had a lot of dead ends, as you can see, for many years. But if they asked, I didn't hesitate to say, but I wasn't like, let me tell you also how I'm feeling about it. It was just, oh, I contacted the consulate, nothing. Okay, cool.
Just kind of giving them updates, but they weren't actively involved in helping you. Okay.
My husband was the one that helped me, and then I had some friends who spoke Spanish that would help.
So what was in these documents that the orphanage sent you?
It was a 2-page letter, and I'm like, okay, we'll see what kind of information this brings. In the top part of it, it had the intake day, like when I was brought in, it had my mother's name. And I was like, whoa, she exists. Before it was just like, I don't even know, like I can't even imagine how she looks. And I would try and imagine, and I just imagined that she looked like me. But I like to describe it as like, gave her like a body. This person that I had imagined, she now was like a person. She existed. She was real. I knew she was real, but it was like, no, she's real. Seeing her name, seeing what she did, and then it explained, my story. And then at the end, it said that I had a brother. And I had always wondered, do I have a brother? Am I a twin? Do I have a famous celebrity, parent? Like your mind gets super creative when you have to figure these things out. I didn't know. And I found out I had an older brother, and they said, who looked just like Maria. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's another human that, my mother created that is like walking around. Do they know me? Do they know I exist? So I got that paper. Well, it's all in Spanish. So I'm like, nombre, his name. So I was like, okay. But I was like, I don't know what any of this says. I called my husband. He had people at where he was working at the time translate it. But I was like, that's not enough. I need like other people to translate it and see if it's all the same. I had my friend who's Mexican translated in that way. And Mexican and then Spanish in Ecuador is different. So I was just like, I'm just going to get people to translate it because I don't know what any of this means. And then I was able to, kind of see the story of how everything went down. And I haven't been able to verify the story. And so I won't really like go in depth with that just because it's like this story, that narrative, right? Somebody has control of the narrative. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to share, like when I'm talking to people, because I'm like, it puts this pressure on my first mother as if, she just wasn't capable type of thing, and not like humanizing her. Like it doesn't humanize her. When people talk about birth families, it doesn't humanize them. And so it basically, she just wasn't able to take care of me, and she tried and wasn't able to.
Was she a single parent at that point?
Yes. Single parent.
Wow. Any information about your first father?
No. And I call him biological father only because...
Sorry.
No. I'm only saying that because I'm going to follow it up with he did not know. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I did not have time in my life with him. So I call him father, but if I'm referring to the story, I do say biological father. His name was not on there. Her employers were on there. And I was able to then spend quite a bit of time with those names and do searches that way. And just like in like American culture where, people give names to the next generation that's similar, maybe add junior to it, it's very similar in Latin American culture as well. And that's how I ended up finding the son of the employer that had employed my mother, who was listed in there. And then I found a family friend listed because of the name. And I found them in 2020, and I sent that message. But
2020, what month?
February.
Just as we're about to go into stay-at-home orders, the entire world is taken over by a pandemic.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, so, part of the thing that we have to do sometimes, or what I've had to do, is I have to send messages to people, and, I have to hope that they're receptive and that I haven't, like, ruined somebody's dynamic if they don't know that they have kids. And so I had to, like, translate these sentences kind of generic with limited information in them. And, hi, this is my name. I only gave my first name, and I was born in Quito. I'm looking for my mother, and just seeing how they would respond is how I would proceed the conversation. And when I found my first mother's name, I went on a searching frenzy in Spanish for people in Ecuador. Are you my mother? Are you my mother? Are you my mother?
You just started writing all the people with that name?
Yes. And I'm like, she could be me. I'm looking and I'm like, I guess so. And here, once again, I don't know. But The document that I did have said that she was a Black woman. They emphasized that in the story. But everybody comes in different shades, right? But I was like, okay, let me look and see. And I would just send messages. I'm like, hopefully no drama is started by this, but, are you my mother? That Dr. Seuss book, Are You My Mother? And this bird is looking for its mother. I'm like, that's me. And I'm like trying to find this woman, and people,
Did they write back to you?
Couple of them. No, I'm not your mother, but good luck. I hope you find her. And then some of them, I deleted the message, and I don't know if they ever looked and were like, what is this? Did the same thing for my brother, my older brother, and, dead end. And then there was this random guy who said that I was his sister, and I'm like, no. So you have to be careful in searching. That's another thing, that people are not going to take advantage of your vulnerability, your desire to want to search.
He said, what did you do? How did you find out he wasn't?
Well, I'm like, I said a little bit more for him because I'm like, a brother, okay? And I, the name, and I said the year. I didn't say the date, and that I was in, and I named the orphanage. And he said, I have a sister by that name. I'm looking for her too. And I'm like, what? Like, send me a photo. And he sent me a photo, and your mind, you're just like, I guess.
Could be me.
Yeah,
could be me.
Could be, yeah. I'm like, okay. And through conversation, I could tell, like, okay, this guy, no. I don't know what his game is. Maybe he has a long-lost sibling, but it didn't feel right. And he sent me the picture too, and I'm like, no, it's not you. And I just, because he had friend requested me, and we were, talking in that way. And I was like, unfriend, like, I'm not going to entertain, like, it's an emotional process.
Wow, you truly encountered every single thing along the way.
Yeah.
I'm blown away by your boldness and bravery, and your just like ability to just stay so focused. And I'm gonna freaking send 1,000 messages to all of the women out there that could be my mom or could be my brother. And I mean, wow, that's a specific type of person right there. I feel that would not only persevere for that long, but just be so proactive down to the smallest things.
Yeah, some of us in the community, we're like, we're investigators, and it's true. I really picked apart that document many times from 2014 to 2020, many times. And even at one point, I didn't know that the number that was on there was a cedula. I didn't know that even what a cedula was. And then it had the employer's ID in it. And those things I just didn't know what they were, and so it wasn't useful to me. But I kept just trying to decipher, like, it was a code that I had to figure this out, and even used Google Maps. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Lion.
With Nicole Kidman?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, the movie inspired me to use Google Earth. I said Google Maps earlier.
Oh, yes.
And so the address that was in there, I put in there. It's nothing. So I'm like, But you get creative when you want answers, when you want, I can't say closure, but when you feel like something is your birthright, I'm just like, I am going to continue the search as long as I'm alive. And there were a lot of tears. There were a lot of moments when I'm like, I don't even want to do this anymore. But of course, I would continue to pursue it and get creative. But there were also moments when I'm like, I'm not going to get anywhere. I'm going to literally be chasing this forever. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to make that choice to do it.
So eventually someone was able to connect you?
Yeah, it was a family friend.
Okay.
And I had sent the message, and then people are going to want a little bit more information. Like, that's a weird thing to get. Hey, I think you know my mom. I'm over here in America. I was adopted. And even people over there, that word is not everybody knows that word. Not everybody knows that's what is happening, right? So they, this person was like, what? And so I had screenshotted a paragraph where it mentioned their name, and I sent it to them and said, included my mother's name. And ooh, she was like, I know your mom. Give me some time and I'm going to try and find her for you. And I was like, wait, what? And that's what she did. She found her about a month later.
How were you functioning during that month?
The pandemic allowed me to not have to focus about having to function outside the house. It was hard, and I can get into that later, but it was very hard. My whole world shifted. Everything became real, and my brain, even though I was actively searching for all these years, in that moment didn't catch up that it was really happening. It was in denial, kind of like when you lose somebody and you're like, no, let me just call them, it was like that. And, I'm just like, what? She says, I found her. She said they were very protective of my first mother, and I really appreciated that. And they were like, you know what? She holds a lot of feelings about this, about what she had to do. Can you talk to her? Like, how are you going to talk to her? And I was like, I just want her to know that I want to meet her and that here I am alive. I have kids. Like, I just wanted to give her like this update. And they were like, okay. They said, we've recorded this video and she's going to talk to you. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to see this woman for the first time in my life. Like, having been separated from her. And they sent this video and she was speaking in Spanish. And of course I didn't know what it was at the time, but she says my name in beautiful words. They come out of her mouth and she's just expressing herself. And even though I don't know what she's saying at the time, I understood what she was saying. And I was just bawling. I was crying. From then on out, I feel like I cried for so many days, off and on. I would even say, like, pinch me to my husband, like, is this real? Like, did I really, it's even to this day, I'm still like, I'm in active reunion. Like, I met my family. Like, these people exist. And after that video, we began corresponding with each other. And I would have to get somebody to translate because she only speaks Spanish.
Wow. This is so moving. I'm very touched and very emotional. I can't imagine how that felt. And after everything, after all those years and those additional years of actively pursuing her, and then suddenly, just like that, a video shows up on your phone and you're going to take your finger and you're going to hit play, and you know that once that video starts, that's your mama.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wild too that, like, you don't even speak the same language. That's just like a whole other thing on top of that.
Yeah, it was like, now what? We have so much to say, and there's a disconnect. And that's where here is this joyous moment, but then I am reminded of the effects of this big decision that I didn't consent to.
Yes. Like, I found her. I found my mother. And like you said, this is a really exciting, loving, special moment in my life. But you cannot detach it from the trauma and the pain and the loss and all those years that you weren't able to have her in your life. And like you said, all those gaps that you need to try to fill, and you don't even know if you will be able to ever fill. And what the heck did you say back to her after that video? I mean, what do you say?
Yeah. Well, at that time, I wasn't comfortable trying to like speak and say something back. So the friend was, it would be where we were on a video chat, and then I would call my friend, or I would have the person there, and it made it really impersonal for a personal like situation. I would say something, but I would make sure that I was looking at her, and the person would, okay, now say something. And I would just say, I want you to know I'm not mad at you. I want you to know that I understand. And
which is not a given at all.
no, Yeah.
that you were able to say that.
Yeah. She held a lot in these years, not knowing where I went. I have feelings about my child leaving the nest with my support. I have feelings about that. But for it to be at such a young age and then you don't know where they end up, I couldn't imagine functioning in life. And she did. She did it. She tried to live and raise other children, but just being able to give her comfort from my lips and just express that I loved her. I immediately wanted to tell her that. There was no doubt, like, I need her to know that I love her. I need her to know that I don't have any ill feelings, like, at all. I'm just ready to connect with her. And it took a few conversations for that to be understood, it not being something that she could share just with anybody. And they're not offering resources for birth mothers over there. And so she was carrying this thing for this many years. And then I show up and it's like, oh, I don't know how this is going to go. And so it was really just trying to comfort her. And that was my main thing. Like, I need her to know that there's no ill will. Like, I need her to know that. And it happened. Over time, there was a sense of peace that she allowed herself. Now, trauma is trauma, and I'm not saying that, we heal ourselves completely with it, but over time, I could see her, that she could release any guilt or shame or some of it, that she could stop having to carry it by herself, and that it was understood why it had to happen.
You also ended up meeting her in person?
I did. Mm-hmm.
We're in the middle of a global pandemic. No one can travel. How long after these first video interactions did you end up meeting her?
Well, of course I wanted to go immediately, but it wasn't, they weren't traveling. Nobody was traveling anywhere in Ecuador. And I know there are other places that were hit really badly with it. And even before I was searching, and I was worried about, about my family in Ecuador. Like, I was just thinking about them. I don't, still at this point, I only knew that I had a mother and a brother. And I was like, gosh, I'm hearing on the news that Ecuador is really impacted by this thing. Resources, there's death and everything. And I was so worried. And I'm like, see, this is another thing. Like, I'm having to worry and I have no clue what is going to happen with this family that I know but don't know. And then, of course, when I connected with them, then I could say, okay, like, see how it impacted them individually. And it wouldn't be until December 2021 that I would actually be able to go and travel to see them, which I can say was okay because it allowed us to form closeness and connection and ask some hard questions before meeting in person, meeting physically. And when I went, it was very warm and welcoming. It was a really welcoming experience, and they were ready to hug me. I hadn't decided whether or not I was going to go just with my husband or bring my kids. And I'm like, these tickets are expensive, and I don't know how often I'll be able to do this. So everybody's going with me, and I kind of laid out all of the pros and cons about that, right? But we're pretty close family, and they understood the seriousness of the situation, that it was a very challenging time, but they went. So we did passports, and we got all the things we needed. And, I don't like riding on planes. And so it was hard to do that. I was like, here I am finally returning back, like riding on planes. And I hope nothing happens because I'm finally getting to see them. Like, it's like the Alanis Morissette, that ironic song. It's like, you finally get to go, like, let everything happen like as it should. And I made it, and we all made it. And it was surreal to be in my country where my ancestors are, where my family is still living there. Nothing prepares you for that, really. We met at my older brother's house, and we arrived pretty late. And they were like, can we pick you up from the airplane? And we were like, no, I need to, like, take this in and get to our place first. And their plane arrived late. And then we got to our place late, as in like early in the morning, as opposed to, normal time. And we showered, and I think we fell asleep for a little bit maybe. And then we went to my brother's house. He's like, come hungry. And they had made like the most, it was called arroz con, and I can't remember how to say shrimp in Spanish. And they had a welcome sign, and they were just all there.
How did it feel when you got out of the car and there's your brother standing, there's your mother, like...
Yeah, well, I get out of the car and they're like waiting at the top, and some of them are waiting at the top, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this is really happening. And we're walking up the stairs, and my sister-in-law's there, and I'm hugging her, and then we're over there. They spray with like alcohol on the feet and stuff like that, and they want you to, especially with the pandemic, like they want you to be clean coming in. So we did all that, and we walk in, and they're all there, and it was like my family. This is my family. Am I in a dream? Am I going to wake up from this? Is this really happening? I couldn't like comprehend that it was happening. Like I was saying earlier, the brain really was it was tricking itself a little bit. Like, obviously I knew that I was there with them, but it was still like, yeah, this is real. You're here. You are here in your birth country. Yeah.
Wow, surreal. Mm-hmm. Did you speak some Spanish by then?
I started taking Spanish class as soon as I found them. I was like, oh no, this cannot be, for me personally. Everybody, experiences things differently, but I was like, I got to sign up for Spanish. I want to be able to communicate with them. My husband signed up. We took several classes, and I'm like, we're ready. We're going to like do really well. And it like went out the window when I got there. Like everything I had learned in these classes, it was like, nope, you're going to forget it. And of course there's emotion behind it. And even the altitude, they are even saying like with the altitude, it affects the brain. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna use that. There's altitude. And then of course we had to wear masks, at times. So it's hard to like hear with the mask. I felt like it was not the most comfortable trying to speak it at that time. I was like, man, this is hard. And I just want to talk to them and share things with them and ask questions. And I have to use a translator on my phone, or wonderfully, my older brother's wife taught herself English. So she was a big translator during our travels there, and she could say a lot.
I have family in Japan that don't speak English, and the few times I've been in Japan, we can't communicate. And more recently, we've now have Google Translate and all those apps, those translating apps. And what I learned from that is like, yes, there's like all these things we can't say to one another, but the things that we need to understand, we don't need a translator. We understand them. Like when you saw that video of your mom speaking to you in Spanish, and you understood exactly what she was saying. You understood on a soul level, and when you saw her, I don't know, but it's enough to have that eye contact or that touch of a hand, or like, you're being in the same room, in the same space. There's like, you're exchanging so much. I mean, what do they say? 80% of communication is physical anyway. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was true. I felt, and from my experience, I felt the love, and it's different for everyone, but I can say that I felt it. It was received. And I was just like, wow, they were like waiting for me. They love me, and we didn't even grow up together.
I could continue talking with you about this for hours and hours and days and weeks and months and years, because there's just so much. There's so much to unpack around this. Right now, where are you at? What are we, 2024? Okay. So it's been 3 years, and you have an active relationship with your brother and your first mom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we share photos of day-to-day life. I get to practice my Spanish with them. We have to make up, for lost times, and we won't ever get that back. But there continues to be this equal desire from both sides to stay involved. And life changed after that, things kind of went back to the new normal. And I couldn't just talk all day with them. That was so beautiful. Like, it was just so fun and, just be real. And it just makes it a little bit harder when life gets busy. But I really appreciate social media and technology because it allows me to stay connected with them, whereas before I couldn't communicate with them at all. But we're very much like siblings. My older brother is like my older brother, and I feel like the big sister with my younger siblings.
You have younger siblings?
Mm-hmm.
Wait.
Yeah. Oh, I guess that's what I found out whenever, I found my mother, and then I did learn that I had other siblings on her side, and then I have 2 siblings on my father's side. So I have like,
Whoa.
yeah, and I grew up in a big family, so I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do this.
So they were able to track down your biological father?
Mm-hmm. I did it on my own. I did some searching on my own. I met him in 2021, I believe. Sorry, yeah, 2021. I met him. He lives in the U.S.
Oh.
And I traveled to go see him with my family. And we spent, I think, like 2 days with him.
So wait a second. There's a whole other timeline here that I wasn't even aware of.
Yeah.
Because it's just so much.
Yeah.
It's just so much. It's like but if you can, are you in touch with your father now?
Mm-hmm.
How was that?
Not everything was out in the open. And so we had to start from scratch, trying to get answers, trying to figure out how I made it here in the U.S.
Because he didn't even know he had a daughter. So that must have been like shocking to him.
Oh, yeah. It was, yeah. And what do you do? Like, how do you process that? So.
Okay. We're going to have to bring you back for like season 2 of Maria Fernanda show and hear everything about your father and all of that. It's just, man, you've had quite a life, my friend, and you're still living it. You're still living it.
Yes.
Full force.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 things I want to ask you. One, you said you had a story to share about the complexity of being an adoptee is an ongoing thing and it never ends. Do you remember mentioning that?
Yeah. So my oldest is doing school stuff. There's some, legal papers where we have to verify that we're her parents and that I'm a citizen. And this is her second year. I think it's second year. And this question didn't come up the first time. And it was, are you a citizen? When did you become a citizen? And here I am like laying on her bed and I'm like, wait, what? And I'm like, I don't even know that date, but I think I have the document. Wait, it's going to be a naturalization paper. And I'm like, wait, it's packed up. And I'm like, I've got to find it because we can't finish this. And so even though, her going to school has nothing to do with my identity or my being adopted, I have to verify that I'm a citizen and then I have to show proof with the naturalization. It's a thing that comes up. I didn't think that it would have anything to do with getting her in college. And here it is. And I'm like, okay.
Just keeps popping up again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
So in the middle of all of this, because I'm sure you had extra time on your hands with your kids and this whole search for your family, you founded Adoptees of Latin America plus Extended Latin Americas. Mm-hmm. And now more recently, you've started this mentoring program called Guia Nova. Mm-hmm. To help other adoptees in the different stages of the reunion process.
Yeah, because of my experience, it did kind of launch me into creating a resource that I didn't have. I have a very supportive husband and I have very supportive friends and, my parents are, supportive. But when I found myself in reunion, I was like, nobody understands what I'm going through. Like, I can express it, but the world is not made for the type of loss that we experience. You know, there's a loss in divorce, a loss in death, a loss in pregnancy, like those types of losses. And there's not one for this particular situation. And while I was experiencing joy, I was also experiencing grief. And that's where the community space was created. It was like, I need this now, like now, and I needed it back in the day. Like, I don't know how I survived without it. Because even though I wasn't aware or self-aware of the impact of my adoption, there are experiences where it impacted me and I didn't know that it was normal, that it was like, well, yeah, that's going to be a side effect of being adopted. And so creating that space, it was just like representation, people who understand this type of loss, people understand or are curious about reclamation, learning their history, trying new foods, whatever it is, like creating this space where people can show up in that way and nobody's going to say, but why? Like, you're okay. They're going to go, I get it. Yeah. Ask those questions that you don't want to ask somebody else. Those critical thinking thoughts that you have, like, that's normal. So we can come together and do that. We have a private Facebook group where conversations always happening every day. And then we have the monthly Zoom call that I facilitate with the other creator of it. And we just show up for 2 hours online and we talk about life. We talk about life. We talk about real things that just happen to also be part of our experience as adoptees.
Wow, that's amazing that you've created this space, this safe space, this supportive space. And I know that, like, the mental health impacts on adoptees are massive. And I heard that adoptees are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than non-adoptees. And obviously, adoptees that are struggling, you know, can seek like professional help. But I'm sure your community has been a resource for like keeping potentially mental health in check or just getting that extra support that could make a huge difference in someone's life.
Yeah. Being able to have the community, we acknowledge that there is trauma, like we get it. And there's different levels of our experiences and how we feel about it, right? But I think that's where the mental health comes in, is if we can't acknowledge that there's trauma, if we can't acknowledge that there's loss, resources can't be made, support can't be given. And that's where the struggle is with identity, with reclamation, with all of the layers of our being. If we don't have the tools to like process and navigate our life, it's very hard. And I'm often very vocal about, you know, having been in the community for 4 years now, like active like this, and I still don't have like in-person community. And that's something that I'd like to, you know, look into. I've visited people and people have come here, but I don't know what the community looks like here where I live. But it's really important that we have the community and that we have trauma-informed, adoption-informed medical care for us to really allow us to process this grief that is there. If it can't be processed, if it can't be acknowledged, if it's gaslit or invalidated, whether intentionally or maliciously, it doesn't allow us to be able to survive or thrive.
Earlier in the conversation, when we were talking about you at the doctor's office and seeing the form and feeling in that moment erased, that really hit me hard when you said that word, erased. And I feel like having this conversation with you today, like, I'm so glad I got to see you and experience who you are as a person. You're so beautiful and strong and inspiring to me, and I'm sure to other people that got to listen to you today. I feel really honored that you were here. And let's give one little fun fact. How did we meet?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. My best friend knows you, and I met Joanna in the 5th grade, and, you know, she'll have some funny stories that she can tell. I was very kind of like a class clown, which is different than how I am now. But I was always just kind of like cracking up in class. And so we knew each other in 5th grade, but we didn't become best friends until 9th grade. And I really connected with her because although she wasn't adopted, she is of mixed race. And there was that understanding. Like that was my first, like, this person gets it, even though it's not a parallel with my personal experience. She gets it, and she held space as best as she could with even the conversations that I was having, at the extent of my knowledge of my own like processing and critical thinking. Yeah, we've been friends for a long time.
Well, thank you, Joanna, for introducing us.
Yes.
And actually, we had her on the show. She's episode 6 when we talk about the impacts of AI on diversity in the entertainment industry. And it's a fabulous episode, if I may say so myself. I really love talking to Joanna, and check out that episode with Joanna if you would like to. Well, I think we have come to the end. Sadly.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts, feelings, something you want to say, share?
Yeah, just really grateful for this opportunity. Really grateful to normalize these conversations. They're real experiences that I've had and many other adoptees have. And it's so important that our voices and our lived experiences are centered. It's so important that we are the ones that get to talk about it and not be secondhand. We're making changes in the world. We're making changes and demanding justice and our basic human rights to be given to us. And so I'm feeling a great deal of gratitude for the adopted community and to you as well for centering my voice today and allowing me to share a lot, but also just a little bit of what I've gone through since the beginning.
Yeah, there's definitely so much more. I will also list the resources that we mentioned, your sites and your work, in the show notes. I learned so much today. And if you listeners, if this has sparked something inside of you that you want to share, we would love to hear from you. You can write into mixunderstoodpod@gmail.com. You could also leave me a voicemail at 323-524-8662. And come say hi on our socials. We're going to be there as well if you want to engage with us. Lastly, if you liked this episode, please like it. Please subscribe to Mix Understood to get alerts for the next episode. It's a weekly podcast. You can also support this work that I'm doing by joining the Patreon program. It would really, really help me with producing these episodes. It does take quite a lot of time. And so if you want to help support this podcast, please join the Patreon. And lastly, share this podcast. Share this episode with your friends and family or anyone who you think would benefit from it. On that note, I'm going to say bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Maria Fernanda.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
This episode was produced by me. Music by Matthias Kunzli.